to the first episode of my knitting and making podcast. I am Me Made Rainbow on Instagram and here on YouTube, and you can call me Rainbow or you can call me Bo for short if you like. This is a quick introduction. I live in Wales in the UK, and I have been knitting on and off since I was about 10-ish years old, 10, 12. So I've been knitting for well over a decade at this point, but like I said, kind of on and off. I've also been crocheting for a similar length of time. I actually learned to crochet just before I learned to knit, and then I learned to knit and knitting, I learned to crochet and managed to make that make sense in my head, and then I went back to knitting and crochet made that make sense, somehow, because they're completely different techniques, and I'm not one of those people who throws my yarn when I crochet, even though I do when I knit. So why crochet made knitting make sense, I don't know, but it did. And I have been knitting on and off ever since, crocheting on and off ever since. I learned to sew a few years ago, but maybe about 10 years ago. And I primarily hand sew, although you won't really see that at the moment. But I do have a 1960s Singer hand crank machine, which I do use to sew. So if I show a lot of sewing here, it will be, here's how I made this modern pattern, built for a modern sewing machine, work on a hand crank machine. And the reason that I use a hand crank machine is that I have cerebral palsy, which affects my legs, which means that I can't really operate a pedal machine as easily as someone who doesn't have that issue. So some of the craft stuff that I will show kind of has that disability context in the background. So this is my first finished object, and this is the Hand Cardigan by Chantal Belial, and I'm just going to make my best attempt at holding it up to the camera because it is constructed in an unusual way, and it's a free pattern, so I can actually talk about that. So I don't know if you can see, but it's a little cropped vest thing, cardigan thing, that has these big sleeves and is basically a big raglan cropped cardigan. And the way that it's constructed is that it has these colourwork panels. You see this seam here. So you start from the bottom of one of these sides and you work in the colourwork all around, and you work some short sections. I don't think that you can see that, but it's in like chunks, like it's curves in chunks. Then you work straight, and then you work some more curved sections like that. Then you work all the way back down, and you cast off at the bottom. And then what you do is you pick up along the back for essentially for just past the shoulders, around, not just past the shoulders, you essentially pick up from here. So you've got a raglan seam just here, and you pick up from about there. So you pick up from about there to the equivalent place on the other side of the, what is essentially a yoke. And then you work a raglan, just standard raglan with really big sleeves. and then you just knit until you essentially have a flat, this whole thing is like a flat panel, and then you seam it onto the colourwork panel, and then you do guard stitch edging, pick up again, and you do guard stitch edging. So what can I say about this cardigan? We're going to start from the basic stats. So this is made in, sorry, I have to look at my notes. This is made in Drops Alaska in light olive and pearl white. So obviously pearl white, light olive. I did not use as much as the pattern says. I can't tell you offhand, but I believe the pattern suggested something around the neighbourhood of about 20 balls, and I got 21 just to be sure. And I probably have about 8 left. So I think I used 13, maybe 14 balls. I can't really remember. And then I used about 1 ball and a third to do these hands. And I really like this cardigan. I really like it. I've worn it a lot. I think it's really quirky. I think it's really cute. I think it suits me quite well in terms of it goes well with the kinds of things I like to wear. It goes well with the kinds of silhouettes that I like to wear. So it's quite large. It's a little oversized. It's quite oversized, but we'll get into that in a minute. It's oversized. It provides a lot of looseness on this part of my body, which I feel like balances my proportions out, and it's something I always like from the stuff I wear on my torso. But there are some issues with this pattern that I noticed, and I don't think that is necessarily always a problem, in the sense of this is a free pattern, and I noticed in the Ravelry comments that sometimes this pattern is just not available and sometimes it is available, and I wondered whether because it was originally a paid for pattern and then it was made a free pattern, and sometimes it's available and sometimes it's not available, and I wondered whether there was this mistake in the pattern that was not there in the paid version, but then when it was taken down and put back up, the wrong version went up. I don't know that that's the case. I just know that some people in the Ravelry comments and projects had no issues with this whatsoever, and some people did. I am one of the people who did. So I made, no, I'm not going to start there. So you make this yoke shape, obviously, and you start from a straight side and you work all the way up. And when I got to the point where you do the short rows, I read the instructions, and it said to work the short rows X number of times, then work the straight section X number of times, and then work the short row section. No, it said to work, I can't check because I'm filming on my phone and my pattern's on the phone. But essentially it gave a set of instructions that would have had you go around this first curve and then just work straight and then finish in this hand. There was no second curve in the pattern instructions, and it freaked me out because I read it, assumed I understood it, worked a set of short rows, 2 straight rows, a set of short rows, 2 straight rows, the number of times that it said to work the short row section. Then when I went back to it, what it actually said was to work the short row section a number of times and then work the 2 straight rows a number of times, not to alternate and then work straight and then alternate again to go around the other curve. And it made no sense to me. It made zero sense, because as I actually understood the instructions, as I read them the second time, having finished the whole piece and blocked it, I looked at it and I was like, oh, I've made a really big mistake. And then I looked at it again and I read through it again and I thought, oh, if I did this, I was going to have a curve going up this side of my body, and then I was just going to have a straight section, and I wasn't going to come around the front of my body on the other side. So I thought I had followed the pattern, and what I had actually done was do something completely different, but something that I think fixed a mistake that was already in the pattern. And that then influenced the pickup rate for picking up the body of the cardigan, because I didn't have the same number of rows that the pattern said that I should have. And I assume this is because I kind of freestyled that part of the instructions, because the instructions themselves didn't make sense. So I didn't end up with the right number of stitches. I ended up with too few stitches. So I sort of, what I did, and this was not the right thing to do, but I've learned better since. What I did, because I hadn't done a raglan before and I didn't really understand how they went, so I just freestyled it, and it works, but it's not what I should have done, and I've learned better since. What I essentially did was pick up all of the stitches, fudge the numbers about what needed to be in what section to make it roughly right, and then I worked double the number of increases along the raglan seams. So there's a few holes occasionally where I've done like 2 make ones really close together. And then, because you can see lower down in the raglan, it's completely smooth. So I basically doubled all of the increases until I'd reached the number I was supposed to have at that point, and then just worked the normal single raglan increases. It took a lot of maths. It was not the right thing to do. I should have just done my increases in one row before starting the raglan, and then done the raglan as written. But I've learned. So that has impacted the fit somewhat, because I think that has made the sleeves a bit bigger than they should have been. But there's also, this has more ease than it should have. By finished circumference, and I haven't checked that my measurements are right, but my gauge was right, and by the end my stitch counts were not that far off. You know, maybe 2 stitches off, so maybe, what is that, like half an inch? So maybe an inch off, which is a considerable difference, but it just fits very loosely and very baggily around this part of my body. And it has a really nice amount of ease through my full chest and waist area. It's just, it has too much up here. So I think I probably could have got away without doing any of those increases on the raglan, without doing any of the double increases, and just doing the increases as written, and then I wouldn't have had so much fabric towards the top. I just would have had, because I think I still would have had that amount of fabric if I had just done one row of increases, got to the right number, and then worked the raglan. I think I still would have ended up with a bit too much here. So I think if I'd just gone with the number that I had and done the raglan, I would have been fine. What else? So I did make some modifications based on the issues that I was having with the pattern, which is that I did more sleeve decreases, sorry. I can't remember exactly what I did, but I think I wrote it down somewhere. I think I wrote it down in my Ravelry notes, but I can't be sure that I did. And I have a really short torso. You know, my waist is quite high on my body, so I made this very, very cropped. You can sort of see that is where you cast on for the bottom of the sleeve, and that is how much a cardigan is left. So I really, really like this cardigan. I really like it. It's a very useful piece in my wardrobe. I wear it all the time. But there was one big mistake in the construction that then had a knock-on effect on everything else. And if I had known then what I know now, having done or having started another raglan construction and having gone through this process, I would have done it in a different way. But I did my best, and I've learned a lot more about construction very quickly since doing this, because this was my second garment after a long break from knitting, so I lost some of the knowledge that I used to have, and I've kind of, in doing this process, I've regained some of that knowledge, and I'm much more sensible now about what you should do when you encounter a problem like that. The other thing about this pattern is that this is the largest size. So in the pattern, it was suggested that it should be worn with about 6 inches of positive ease. The sizes are, the relevant sizes are a 50-inch finished circumference, a 55-inch finished circumference, and a 60-inch finished circumference. 60 is the largest size, and is written to correspond with a US size 30. Now, my full chest measurement is 50, so I didn't want to make, obviously, I didn't want to make the size that had ended up with no positive ease, but I also didn't really want to make the 55 finished circumference, because that would have been just short of the recommended ease in the pattern and the ease that the model was wearing it with. I didn't want to have a smaller amount of ease than the model was wearing it with. And I would have liked to have exactly that amount of ease, but I thought, I like oversized things, I will just make the 60, the finished circumference of 60 inches, and just wear it oversized. Probably would have fit somewhat better, but it may also have been a little bit tight. Not tight, but not loose and casual in the way that it was in the pattern. But I also just don't think it was, because it only went up to a finished circumference of 60 inches, when it, just for a minimum of size inclusivity, should have gone up to 66 as a minimum. I wasn't impressed with the sizing of the pattern, and because I'm not impressed with the sizing of the pattern, I am slightly concerned that the grading may not have been what it could have been, and maybe that's why it's now a free pattern instead of a paid pattern. You know, I understand that because this is really unusual construction, it is not the easiest to size in accordance with the Craft Yarn Council's size chart, or as old as size chart. It is probably going to be a real pig to grade and to size. But I wasn't impressed, and because there's that big issue in the written instructions for the construction, I am just not convinced that this was sized great. I'm not convinced that it was, I mean, obviously it wasn't sized great, but I'm not convinced that it was graded as well as it could have been. Because it just, even after you get to, even when you get to the point of me having fixed all my mistakes and done everything, had basically the right, I'm pretty sure I had the right stitch count in the sleeve, for example, because I did some extra decreases. I'm pretty sure I had all of the right numbers by the end of my reglans, but I can't be certain, but I think I did. And I mean I can show you, right? Like, this, probably this decrease row was where it should have been, and so that sleeve would have been like 2 inches wider. So I did these really fast decreases because I don't have long arms. I needed to do it really quickly. This was supposed to be in the middle of my forearm, and it is here because it grew slightly in blocking, and I still didn't have the room to do as many decreases. I mean, I had the room to do the decreases in the pattern, but then I was like, I tried it on and I was like, oh my god, this is huge. This is unwearably big in the sleeve. So I had to just do this really steep decrease to get to something that was a bit more large, but wearably large, you know, not getting in my way when I go to a food festival and I have, you know, getting mustard on my sleeves. I'm saying that because I did finish it specifically to wear at a food festival because I have a pair of trousers that are this exact colour. I just wanted to wear the outfit. What else can I say? The bind off is basically a knit two together bind off. Because I don't know, I like that bind off. so and it's stretchy-ish and it's just what I did and I like it. And it makes a nice firm solid edge, and I've done that on all of the sections. And my ribbing, my garter stitch edging sections are slightly shorter than written. I've ended up with about 5 pill bumps. So I think I did maybe 2 fewer rows than I was supposed to. I think that's it. I think that's everything about this pattern. So overview, liked it, went quickly, learned a lot. Do think it could have maybe had a proofread afterwards. Do think it maybe could have had a proofread, and could be more inclusive. As a general rule, by the way, I don't make patterns that are not size inclusive overall. I will look at if there is something that is free and is really unusual and isn't size inclusive, that's okay, but I won't pay for a not size inclusive pattern. So this will be one of very few patterns that you'll see that are not size inclusive. So I'm just going to get that out of the way, and then it's size inclusivity from here on out. Okay, so that's that one. And then the other finished object that I have is actually a gift for my dad for Father's Day. So if he happens to be watching, just skip ahead. I'll put a chapter in. But I'm really proud of these socks, and they also had some issues, but those issues were all user error. But not the same kinds of user error that are in that one. I'm sure I'm gonna end up with patterns that have no user error in them eventually. Oh, this is in my Cotton and Seed Handmade project bag. There's 2 pockets, and so it has some cute cheap on it. Okay, so these are the socks. I'll just hold them both up to show you, and I'll pull these bits of alpaca off them. Okay, they're a bit crinkly because they've been in the project bag. And they are flap and gusset heel. Hold on. Flap and gusset heel. They have these little sporty stripe things. They have a 3x3 rib, and they have a no graft toe. No, I'm not showing that very well. There you go. Is that in focus? There we go. Okay, so this, I made this following the Summerlee Knits Pocket Socks numbers, but I also used the Kino Knits Kifaru, or I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Kifaru mittens pattern for the rhino motif. There are very few patterns on Ravelry with a rhino motif on them, which is really annoying because they're my dad's favourite animal, which is why they're on his Father's Day socks. So the reason the reason I'm mentioning there aren't that many patterns is because that's why I had to mush 2 patterns together. And that is the source of user error. So everything else went completely fine. The only thing is that despite having done colour work before and despite having done intarsia before, you know, it was just on the one that I just showed you, I forgot about the fact that if you do it in the round, the contrast yarn is on the other side than the one that you need it when you go back to the front of the round. So did it, ended up with it too tight because I decided to carry the yarn all the way around. It was too tight, and then I just pulled it back, redid it by cutting the yarn at either side of the little motif, and then wove in the like 50,000 ends. But that's the only user error. Everything else is fine. So it has this, like I say, 3x3 rib. That's not in the pattern. I just like 3x3 rib. It has a, let me see if you can actually see it. I don't know if you can see that, but it has a German twisted cast on, which I really like. I learned it specifically for these, and I really like it. I like it much more than the long tail cast on. So, but Hip Knit Hooray in a recent, is it a recent podcast? I don't think it is a recent podcast, but her podcast hasn't been going for that long, so you can probably find it quite easily. Mentioned that she does the German twisted cast on for what ends up as the pearls, and then use a regular long tail cast on for the rib section to avoid that sort of slight bump before you start the knit sections. And I think that's really smart. I like how this looks, but I can understand why some people might find it a bit messy. I just think that's really smart. So if you were looking at these and you were thinking, oh, I like how that goes on the pearls but not the knits, Knit Hit Hooray has you covered. Yeah, so I used the pocket socks numbers for the size large. I have a somewhat looser gauge than the pocket socks called for. Stitch gauge, I think it doesn't actually call for a row gauge, but I think my row gauge is pretty much on because I got my distances in about the same number of rows as was called for. Yeah, so I think I've got a bit more width, but that's slightly by design because my dad fits between the size large and the size XL, and so I didn't mind that I've ended up making a slightly larger size because that, you know, I got him to send me a lot of measurements and I checked them against the sock once I realised that my gauge was quite off by a few stitches, and it's going to be a slightly slouchy sock, but it is going to have some negative ease, so I don't think it'll be too bad. So these were knit on 2.5mm needles, and they were knit in the Cascade Heritage sock, which is, I've got some here. Okay, I'm gonna keep that in because I think that was funny. It's basic. It's this yarn. It's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and it is 400 meters per 100 grams, which is 437 yards per 100 per 3.5 ounces. If that's helpful. I'm British, so I get to mix as many centimeters and inches together as I like. Yeah, so yeah, that's all about that yarn. So I'll explain this one in a minute because since I've got it down, I'll explain it. This is in the forged iron and frost grey. So this is forged iron and this is frost grey. And these rows are 3 stitches wide. I followed the instructions for doing a jogless stripe, but I didn't do it that well. Has a slip stitch heel flap, has a flap and gusset, And then I changed again to the light grey for the toe. And I have enough left. Oh, they're in the back there, but you can just about see the light grey. I have enough left to make a pair of, I think, a pair of shorty socks for my spouse. I don't think I have enough to do another pair of long socks, but I have enough to make a second pair of socks. I think. I hope. Cross my fingers. These ones are also going to be socks for my spouse. These are going to be the Truth Is Out There socks by Stone Knits, which is aliens, and this is going to be the alien faces. The black follow as well. Yes, it did. Where did it go? What did it? I'm not sure. Anyway. Oh yeah, it did. It's down here. So this is going to be the background, and this is going to be the contrast. And they're going to be these really cute alien colourwork socks, but I'm not going to make them for a bit because I have a couple of projects on, and that brings me to my widths. So I'm going to go oldest first, and it's in this cute little bag. This is also a cotton and handmade bag. And this is my Tolsta. I'm not gonna get it. It's just this. This is all it is. It's the neckline. The neckline, except I'm doing the modification as given in the pattern for doing a folded neckline. So it's gonna look like that. And I've just started the raglan increases, and I've just done the short rows. That is, so the back is like this long, and the front is like, what's the back shoulder? The front is like this long. In the paintbox yarn cotton 4-ply, so it's 100% cotton, and it's in the colour fuchsia. I have it written down as flamingo, but it's not flamingo, it's fuchsia. Yeah, and this is, how much is this? 50 grams, 170 meters, so 1.7 ounces, 186 yards. So, making it in this, really nice, lovely soft cotton yarn, cheap, nice quality, doesn't seem to split, not too hard to use, like not hard on the hands. And I have this much of it, and the reason that I've stopped at this point is because almost as soon as I cast on, this is a Tolsta, sorry, by Rebecca Clow. Almost as soon as I cast on, Rebecca Clow announced on her podcast, The Craya Bear, that she's going to do bush shaping. She's going to do a release for bush shaping in the pattern. And what I had been planning to do was to fudge my own bush shaping. This is in size 6, by the way. I was going to do my own bush shaping. And then she said, hello, I'm going to release bush shaping for this pattern. And I was like, oh, okay. That's probably smarter than inventing my own bush shaping. Because, like I said earlier, I've been learning a lot recently. I've been doing a lot of reading about construction. I've been doing a lot of reading about how to do this kind of shaping, how to do that kind of shaping, how to know if you need any shaping whatsoever. I've been doing a lot of research, so I'm more competent than I was in the hands pattern. But it didn't seem smart to make up my own bush shaping on someone else's pattern and expect a nice result when I would be basically going from absolutely nothing whatsoever. So I got to the end of the short row section and I put it away, and I said, okay, I will pick this back up when the bush shaping is released. And I had been intending to put it down, and then I put it down about the time that she released the call for the Tolsta tank testing it, and I was hoping to get that, but I didn't. So then I cast on the socks, finished the socks, and I thought by the time I finish these socks, the Tolsta will be released. The new update will be released, and it hasn't been as of recording, which is fine. It's not that I was expecting it to be released quickly, it was that I was expecting the socks to take me longer than they did, because the first one took ages and then the second one took like 3 days. So I have also cast on another top, and this is also in this bag in the other side. So I have quite a bit of progress on this one, and this one is the Souffle by Laura Penrose, and I'll try not to let my stitch marker fall off. So I have quite a bit of this. I've not quite finished the yoke. I'll probably finish the yoke today. Well, not finish the yoke, but join the second colour. So you start with a single strand of, I think it was written for Drops Kid Silk. You start with a single strand, you get to the point where the big ruffle is going to be, you put the second strand on, you work some more sleeve stuff, you separate, you work the body. So I'm almost at where the ruffle is going to be, but not quite. I think I have one more increased row and then another inch of straight stockinette, and then I can do it. So I'm pretty far into this pattern. I only cast this on Saturday. It's now Thursday, so it's gone quite quickly. I have been able to have quite a lot of knitting time because I'm waiting on a contract for my job, so I have a lot of downtime right now. So I've been able to work quite a lot on this, but it's working up quite quickly as anyway. Like it's a big gauge. It's 4mm, and these are higher sharps. I always knit on higher sharps if I can manage. I don't have a full range, so sometimes I have to be on something else, but I like the higher sharps. So all of this, and that is in the Navia alpaca, 25 grams, 100% alpaca, 230 meters. So 230 meters per 25 grams. And this is the colour Daylily. And then when I join the second colour, because I'm not just doing 2 strands, I'm doing 2 colours. There's a story behind this, I'll go into it in a minute. So this is my swatch, so you can see the colours. So it goes, and you can see it's quite a different texture. This is where I just tested out what colour I wanted for the yoke. So that's what the single strand section looks like, and this is what the double stranded section looks like. So it's a fair bit more dense. This is the second colour. This is olives. So the yellow is Daylily, and then this is olives. You might be able to see just over here styles that we also have. This, if I can go on, doesn't have, it's just throwing itself. And this is it. And they don't have names. I mean, they don't have names written on the belly band. So my partner crochets, and my partner crocheted their own self a cardigan in Viking yarn, in black and white, and then one colour that was like both grey and white, like it's 2-ply. So it's, yeah, you see that. So it's 2-ply, so it's one strand, and then the other one was a different colour, and they were wound around each other. And my partner was going to make me a cardigan in yellow and green, and wanted to make something that was a bit lighter, a bit more summery, because their cardigan is very thick and heavy and very winter and very warm. And it was getting a bit warmer when they wanted to make me one, so they wanted to make me something light. And we both really enjoyed this. Except they tried to crochet it, on a loosish gauge and were just like, I can't do this. I can't make this in this yarn. It's not the right thing. So I said, okay, well, give me the yarn then. I'll make something out of it. And so I'm making the souffle, and they got thicker yarn in essentially the same colours from my cardigan. So this is going to turn into a cardigan, and that is going to turn into a top. And so that's all my whips. But I also have a couple, well, that's all my knitting whips. I also have a couple of sewing whips that I want to show you. This is not all of my sewing whips, but some of my sewing whips are probably going to be put into hibernation, taken apart and used for something else. I don't know. Just some of them aren't really my style anymore, and some of them are just not fun to work on. So I'm going to start with this, which is my Dinosaur blouse. I don't know what the best way to show you. So it's this like, square necked blouse with this little ribbony lacy edging thing, and it is a hack of the Sew Liberated Nocturne top. And the Nocturne top is one of my favourite patterns. I've made 2 dresses based on it, where I take the regular Nocturne top and I just lengthen it all to hell and put a bit more width. I really like that, and I find there are some issues with the fit, but they're mainly in my shoulders, which I have quite broad shoulders, and so there's a little bit of impact on the sleeve, the shoulder and the sleeve, but the actual wearing experience is fantastic. I really like this pattern, and it goes together really easily, and I really enjoy making it. So I've actually made it 3 times. I've made two dresses, and I made a different hack into a top. So this is my 3rd hack of this pattern. I've not actually made this pattern unhacked. I've only ever made it. I mean, the dresses is just a length thing, but so for this top, what I did was, so the way the Nocturne top works is it has a yoke. So it comes down here, goes across here, and then there's a skirt portion that gathers onto it, and that's just a body portion that comes onto it. And that's the part that I lengthened. And I really like this. I think it's very flattering, it's pretty, it's not too fussy, but it's nice. But you don't always want tops that just have a yoke section and it's got like a V. It actually looks a lot like the souffle while the souffle is being knit up, because so on the souffle there's a keyhole back, but when you're knitting that, it just sits open in like a V shape with a round neck. The souffle has a round neck with a V shape. It's just the opposite way around. My dress version is exactly this yellow, so it's exactly the same as the souffle. It's really funny. Anyway, so the way that I hacked this was I put the body pieces and the yoke pieces together, the pattern pieces together at the armhole with overlapping the seam allowance, so essentially eradicating it. Retraced the armhole and widened the body to account for these gathers that are in the middle. So it's sort of I just sort of put the pieces back together again, if you like. And I've made that top before. It's great. That's also a square neck version. And it's great. So I've done a 4th version, but a 2nd version of the square neck with slightly different square neck. So this is shallower. So as you can see, as I just showed you, square neck, straight up and down, just simple square neck thing. But what I also did was, and it's quite cropped, it's quite short, I don't know if you can see, Um, so I decided I had a lot of this left over. I've got 5 meters of it. It's from Pound Fabrics, and it's this nice but kind of weird cotton fabric. And when I say kind of weird, and I'm going to do it here because I'm going to cut this part off, as I will explain in a minute. It's, I don't know if you can tell, but it's slightly stretchy. This isn't a bias seam. This is straight edge. This is obviously biased, but this is straight. And it's just stretchy. It's just stretchy. It's even stretchy on the length. Not very much, but it has a smidge of give. But it has a lot of give on the lengthways. So it's slightly weird stretchy cotton. I had 5 meters of it because it was really cheap. And I decided to make it into some of it into some Sew Liberated. I think they're called the Arthur pants. They're like balloon shape. And I made those, and I didn't like them. Partly because I think because of the fabric, it didn't go together very well. And I think I just didn't have a good time. And that's not a problem with the pattern. That's a problem with me. Just not. I'm very often not in the right mood for sewing, and if I try and sew when I'm not in the right mood for it, I go kind of bonkers. So I made those and tried them on, and I didn't like them very much, partly because I made them in a way that wasn't great, but also because what I figured out after making those trousers was that I don't like a silhouette that is narrow at the ankle, because I have quite wide hips and I'm quite short, and I find that if I have something that goes narrow at the ankle, I look lopsided, so my top half looks very large and very wide, and my bottom half, because as I mentioned earlier on, I have cerebral palsy, my legs, the muscles in my legs are not very well developed, and I'm short, and it just all adds up to this silhouette that looks really lopsided on me. And I'm not saying it's a bad silhouette, I'm just saying on me, for my own preferences, it's not what I like and what I want to wear. So the Arthur pants are in limbo. And what I decided to do with the rest of it, I had quite a lot of this left, and I knew I wanted a blouse, but I didn't want to have tons and tons and tons of this fabric left and nothing to use it with, because it's weird, and I could put it in a quilt, but I think it would be weird. So I decided to do, let me find this the seam. I decided to do a big sleeve, because I love a big sleeve. Sorry, I'm just looking underneath to see whether you can actually see how big this is. And so this is the actual width that I cut the sleeve at. Like, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And I had the best of intentions. I was like, it's going to be this beautiful Stevie Nicks silhouette. It's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to contrast with the high square neck to have these really huge dramatic sleeves. And then, you know, I've got one sleeve in. I haven't got the other sleeve in. And it's not finished. You know, it's free on there. There's the body. So it's free underneath all of the sleeve. We just got a t-shirt. So I tried it on, basically just put the body on and put the one sleeve over my arm and held my arm out, and I just thought, it's too big. It's not going to be able to be worn with anything. It's not going to be able to have anything underneath it, over the top of it, I mean. So I'm going to have to cut it down. So I've decided I'm going to cut the sleeve down. I don't know how narrow I'm going to go. I'm not going to go as narrow as the original Nocturne, because I find that sleeve comfortable, but a little narrow in the bicep. It's got ease, but it just doesn't fit. It fits a bit tightly, like just above my elbow. Again, it has ease, it's just, it's not as much as it should have. It's a little bit less than it should have. So I still want to have essentially a sleeve that doesn't taper towards the wrist. I want a sleeve that is either straight or bigger at the wrist. So, but this is twice the width of the sleeve. Like this is 2 sleeves width, and it's too big. So I'm going to cut that down. And when I've cut that down, I'm going to hopefully remake hopefully make the rest of the blouse. So because that's just to put the other sleeve in, finish the sleeve seam, sew the sleeve and body. That's one reason why I like the nocturne, because you don't set the sleeve in, you just sew it into the armhole and then sew the sleeve seam and body seam as one seam. Sew that and then do the hem and do the sleeve hem. And it should be fairly quick. And I've said that, and it's probably going to be 6 months before I finish it. So that's all I can really say about that. It's based on a nice pattern that I've messed all to hell, but in a way that actually works because I've already made this before. It's a slightly different version. Yeah, so hopefully this won't take me 6 months, but it probably will. So my next work in progress is it's not a garment, it is a quilt, and it is this really nice patchwork kit based on Fasset fabrics. Sorry, I'm trying to get all of it, trying to get you to be able to see as much of it as I can. It's not a particularly big quilt, it's not even my full wingspan along the short edge. It's just like a throw size. And it's using these Fasset fabrics, and it was a kit from the Cotton Patch here in the UK. And I really liked it, so I decided it was not that expensive. It was about, I think it was 30 something pound for these fabrics, the instructions, and the fabrics for the binding. And it was quite a lot of fabric. I had a lot of offcut. I've quilted before, but I've only done English paper piecing. I attempted a patchwork once before, and I didn't get along with it. It was a big double bed patchwork quilt, and I didn't get along with it was a complicated quilt. It wasn't like complicated for people who know how to patchwork, but I don't think it was as beginner friendly as I hoped it would be. And I just, at that time when I was doing it, I didn't have a lot of patience, and I just got really frustrated. So my mum finished it. My mum, who's a quilter, she finished it. And I've kind of grown up around quilts, but I didn't do a lot of patchwork. And my spouse patchworks and does beautiful, beautiful things. And I saw these fabrics on the Cotton Patch, and I thought, okay, this is a simple quilt. It's based on squares and rectangles. It is these fabrics that you really like and these colours that you absolutely love. And it's not that expensive, and it's like a couch throw quilt. You know, it's usable, but it's not as big as a bed-size quilt. So I really like it, and I tried really hard to actually make this work, and I think I did it, but I had to have my partner sit with me while I was doing the cutting, because for most things I'm really good at figuring out how to do it based off written instructions. I'm good at turning things around in my head. I'm good at, which I say because my spouse isn't, but my spouse does these beautiful complex patchworks that I really struggled with the cutting, which is stupid because it's squares and rectangles. But I really struggled with it, but I'm really happy with it because it looks like it's supposed to. Everything's in the right places. Some of the fabrics have ended up upside down, but I don't actually think that was a cutting error. I think that was just, I don't think it was a cutting error, and I don't think it was even a sewing error. I think it's that there's one of them. No, it was a cutting error because there was one of them that was supposed to be cut the opposite way. Don't ask me to explain it any more than that. That was supposed to be cut a certain way, that was supposed to be cut lengthways or vertical, when the other ones for the same dimensions were cut the opposite, so that the pattern was the right way up. And I think I just blanked on that. And so there was one that was a bit upside down. And so in order to offset that, the ones that I could turn around, a couple of them I did turn around. So, like for example, this hydrangea, it's actually facing the wrong way. And I did that on purpose. I think that was one of the ones I did on purpose, to make it look like, you know, so that there wasn't just one that was the wrong way around. And I think it looks nice because they're, you know, they're kind of hectic prints, and I really like that about them. So it's also got, I can't remember what the wadding fibre is. I think it's cotton, because I think this is one of my spouse's scrap waddings. Yeah, I don't think this is mine. I think this is my partner's. And then it's got this on the back. Which is Makawa's Jewel Tones Hummingbird. Like I said, the kit came with enough for the front and enough for the binding, but you had to provide your own back. So I just went to a quilt shop near me to have a look and see what I could do. And this is just one drop of 44 wide, so it's not a big quilt. I think I ended up getting 1.5 meters of this, and I've used the whole piece, I think. No, I didn't. No, I did do. I used the whole drop, and I've got like, yeah, so I've got like this much overhang at the bottom. And so I think it used about 1.5 meters. So it's about 44 by about 1.5 meters, because it used basically the whole width. I don't have as much overhang at the sides as I wanted to have. I also don't have as much overhang at the top because I only realised about having enough overage. I've been through this. My mum has told me this like 15,000 times, but there's just something about patchwork quilting, and because a lot of the quilting projects I'm working on right now are quilt as you go. 2 of them are quilt as you go, and then I have another, and then I have this. 2 of them are quilt as you go. So I've been working on quilt as you go for most of the time. Yeah, I've done one really small quilt that had loads of overage because it was just really narrow. Then I had another quilt that had a load of overage because it was really narrow, but probably similar dimensions to this, but a little bit more narrow. And that backing fabric was huge. It was a massive, like, extra wide backing flannel. And so I didn't even have to think about overage because it was huge. And then I've done a load of quilt as you go, and the overage thing just dropped out of my mind. So I don't have enough overage really at the top. I just, like, barely any. But I'm trying to balance the quilting really carefully so that I don't shrink, you know, like I don't pull all of this. It's safety pin basted. And let me find a bit where I've done some quilting. So I'm doing machine quilting on this using the aforementioned hand crank machine. This is also my first time doing any machine quilting. My mum is a hand quilter. She doesn't like machine quilting. My spouse doesn't mind machine quilting, but their sewing machine doesn't really quilt very well. It just doesn't enjoy quilting. So I've mainly done hand quilting. My mother's mainly done hand quilting. My spouse has mainly done hand quilting. But my problem is I have ADHD, and as part of having ADHD, the last parts of projects are just really hard. It's like I should be done with this by now. I want to be finished with it. I don't want to spend time working on this. So quilting for me can be a problem because I've made the quilt top, and I've pinned it to its wadding, and I've pinned it to its backing fabric. Why isn't it done? So my spouse suggested I try machine quilting and see if I get on better with that. So it's machine quilted, and I'm going, hold on, let's see if I can get this up to the screen. I don't believe you can actually see any of that. But what I'm basically doing is I'm just sort of randomly going around. Can you see it there maybe? No, you can't. I'm basically just randomly going around each square. So I'm taking each square as I go, and I'm just on the smallest squares, I'm just doing a border. I'm just going, not stitching the ditch, but I'm like a quarter of an inch over, and I'm just going around the circle, going around the square. And then on the larger squares, I'm just sort of freehanding as much as you can freehand on a machine that doesn't do freehand. And I'm just going in straight lines and then turning a corner whenever I feel like turning a corner, and just sort of maniacally going in these squares. So it is fairly decently quilted. Some of them are done. Some of all of the smaller squares are done, and I think 2 of the larger ones are done. But there's quite a lot of squares. So this needs to be quilted though, because this just needs to be quilted, because I really, really want to make the legendary quilt by Elizabeth Hartman. I'm going to put a picture. And it has Bigfoot on it. Like, I don't know what it is about me, but I just really enjoy Bigfoot. Like, it's not like I don't believe Bigfoot exists. Like, you know, Bigfoot is a hoax. But I just really enjoy stuff that has Bigfoot in it. Like, there was an episode of The X-Files with Bigfoot. There's probably more than one, but and I just really enjoyed it. It just compels me. Like, there's just something very magnetic to me about the idea of, and this is a big thing to say in a first podcast, but there's just something that really compels me about the idea of, you know, we're not alone in the universe. Like, I love aliens, I love cryptids, I just really like this stuff. And so I saw this legendary quilt and I was just like, I need that in my life. I just need it. I can't live without it, but like, I really need this. And so I'm gonna make it, and I really want to make it, but I can't have another quilt whip before I finish the quilt. And I've got a hexagon quilt that's basically scrappy, that is just massive hexagons, paper piece hexagons, massive things, and it's just boring to me. I need to make it, and I want to make it because the fabric's so beautiful, but it's boring. And then I've got a hexagon quilt as you go quilt that is really similar to the giant hexagons, and it's just also boring because it's got so many different colour combinations, because I'm doing like a double-sided. So the quilt as you go, if you don't know about quilt as you go, it's you have a shape, your front, and then you have a piece of wadding that is the same size as your front, and then you have a backing piece that folds over and you do like a bound edge, like that, and then you just sew it, you just quilt it, and then you take all these pieces at the end and you sew them all together. And so I wanted all the backing pieces on this one quilt to all be different because I thought it would look really badass. But I don't want to end up with like patches of one colour and then patches of another colour. So it requires like 2 spreadsheets to manage. And I haven't worked on it in like 5 years because it's not a kind of I said I had ADHD. This is not an ADHD friendly project. And then there's another one that is all these William Morris fabrics, and it's beautiful, and it just has one bag, but it's huge. It is going to be massive. It is going to be so huge. It is going to be probably a king size quilt, and it's huge. And I've got a fair distance, but oh my god, it's so huge. So I'm not going to finish that. I mean, I am going to finish it eventually, but I mean, I'm not going to finish it quickly. I'm not going to finish either of the hexagon quilts quickly. This is the only thing I can manage. This is the only thing I can finish. So I have to finish this before I make the Bigfoot quilt, because otherwise I'm just not going to make the Bigfoot quilt for like another 5 years, and I can't live like that. I have to have this Bigfoot quilt. So I have to finish this, and I have to finish this, because I have all of this brown linen, and I'm going to use the brown linen for the back for the Bigfoot quilt. But I also want a pair of loose trousers from, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Tauco magazine. I think it might be number 6, but I can't remember. I want the loose trousers. It's like a skirt on one leg and a trouser on the other leg. Badass. Gorgeous. And I want that in the brown linen. And if I cut the trousers out, I am going to have a load of scraps. And I can use the brown linen that is going to be the back of the Bigfoot quilt to also be the Bigfoot. You see the process? Like, I need to cut out the trousers to have the scraps to make the Bigfoot, so that I have a massive piece without having to worry about, oh, I need to cut Bigfoot out of this, that I can use as the back, right? So I need to finish this so that I can have another clothing whip, and I need to finish this so that I can have another quilt whip, and then I can make Bigfoot. Okay, does that make sense? I feel like I've just got so much more like enthused just talking about Bigfoot, which says everything about me, I think. Yeah, like I used to be really into fairies, and then I was really into dragons, and then I was really into dinosaurs, which are a different thing, but like there's a straight line between dragons and dinosaurs, right? And then I got really into aliens because I got really into Star Trek, and now I'm really into Bigfoot. Okay, I'm gonna stop there, because you don't need to hear about all of my weird things in one podcast. This is too many. So, okay, and I don't have anything else to show you or be interesting about. Oh, but I do have a sort of teaser, which is that with the last pre-order, the library collection, I think, I got a couple of skeins of a Sorella yarn. And I believe that should be shipping in the next week or two. So by the next podcast, which I hope will be next month, but I don't know for sure, hopefully I will have that yarn, and that will be really nice and exciting and fun. And I've never used Sorella yarn. I've never even seen it like in person. So that will be a whole fun, interesting section, I hope. Because I picked the colour that is the most me. And even I think from this single little podcast, you will see that yarn and you will be like, this is so incredibly the right yarn that it's going to be so funny. It's just going to be so funny. So hopefully that is going to be next time. Exciting. Pre-order. New yarn. And hopefully finish Souffle, and hopefully picking the Tolsta back up. Maybe finish one of these. Maybe. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I get a bit more fluent about being on camera next time. And I'm sorry for all the cuts in this episode, but I waffle. I waffle and I knock cups over and I have problems. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I mean, you know about the whole like and subscribe thing already, right? But it would be fun. It would be nice if you did. And I'll try and wear even more exciting earrings next time. Bye bye.